Abraham's Hebron, Then and Now, presented by Jeffrey M. Bradshaw in 5 parts. Part 1, Introduction. The purpose of this series is to provide a brief introduction to some of the places linked in tradition to the lives of the family of Abraham and Sarah. Many, though not all, of the sites we will visit are in or near the city of Hebron. Interest in the historical Abraham among scholars has waxed and waned over the years. As a few examples of current scholarship, we note the many studies in cultural memory by Ronald Handel and others. Research by Daniel Fleming about the possibility of ancestral connections to Abraham's family among the semi-nomadic Amorites who ranged from Haran in the north to Mari in the south. Comparative study of the rights of royal priesthood at Mari and in ancient Israel by Ronan Head and myself. Important work pioneered by Paul Hoskisson, John Gee, and Carrie Muhlstein of BYU on the location of cities named in the Bible and in the Book of Abraham, and ongoing excavations in ancient Hebron. This map of trade routes gives a big picture view of some of the areas within the Fertile Crescent associated with Abraham and his ancestors. Starting at the top of the ancient coastlines of the Persian Gulf at right, we see the trade route that traversed the well-known city of Ur in southern Mesopotamia. The city of Mari is not shown on this map, but was located further north on the trade route that followed the Euphrates River. According to Daniel Fleming, Mari was the southernmost range of the semi-nomadic people he associates with the ancestors of Abraham. Further north is the town of Haran, where Abraham's father Terah and his nephew Lot and their families stopped on their journey to Canaan. The fact that Haran is so far off the direct path to Canaan has led some scholars to wonder if one of the northern cities named Ur might be a better candidate as Abraham's starting point than the more famous Ur in the south. In addition, Hoskisson, Gee, Muhlstein, and others have argued that a northern location makes more sense in light of stories involving Egyptians in the early part of the Book of Abraham, and a possible reference to the town of Olishem or Ulusum in the same area. Heading southwest from Haran toward the Mediterranean coast, Abraham would have come into the land of Canaan, modern Israel. Now we zoom in from the wider region to look more closely at the area of Canaan where most of the scriptural history of Abraham took place. Although archaeology cannot directly substantiate the scriptural stories of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it can tell us something about the geography, settlements, and daily life of their contemporaries. Learning more about these places helps us get a more realistic sense of the setting in which the patriarchs lived. As he entered Canaan, Abraham would have passed through the Canaanite city of Lashem or Laish, later known by the name Dan. Genesis 14 tells of the confederacy of kings that took Abraham's nephew Lot captive. In verse 14, we are told that Abraham armed 318 of his servants and, quote, pursued them to the northern boundaries of the land, that is, unto Dan. When Abraham first entered the land of Canaan, his party would have been refreshed by these beautiful waters of Dan. They would have passed by this impressive stepped approach to the Gate of the Three Arches at the Canaanite city of Laish, which has survived to its original height of 7 meters. Abraham also passed through the well-known sites in the south of Canaan. For example, Genesis 21, 22 through 34 tells of how Abraham and Abimelech settled their dispute over wells in Beersheba through a covenant. The name Beersheba means well of the oath or well of 7. Later, Isaac built an altar here, and Jacob is said to have had his vision of the ladder to heaven after he left Beersheba. The Beersheba area has always been known for its abundant water. Fed by an aquifer, this well is 70 meters deep. Many centuries after Abraham, during the height of the Israelite community in the Iron Age, Beersheba became a major Israelite settlement. This 4-horned altar at Beersheba is thought to have been from an Israelite temple. Some think that it may have been destroyed during King Hezekiah's reforms, as described in 2 Kings 18:4. Between Dan and Beersheba lies the city of Hebron. A study of the biblical record makes it clear that Hebron and surrounding areas served as somewhat of a hub for Abraham in his many journeys. The name Hebron comes from the Hebrew haver, friend, traditionally associated with Abraham, who was seen as the friend of God. Al-Khalil is the Arabic equivalent of Hebron. Because the area surrounding Hebron is located in part of the Palestinian-controlled West Bank that has often been the scene of violent dispute, it is not visited by tourists as frequently as some other places in Israel. Other sites, such as Rachel's tomb near Bethlehem, as well as Jacob's well and Joseph's tomb further to the north, are also in areas of the West Bank to which travel is sometimes complicated. It is hoped that this series of presentations will increase exposure to these lesser-known sites so rich in biblical history. There are 5 presentations in this series. Following this introduction, a second presentation will take us to the well-known site of the Tomb of the Patriarchs located in modern Hebron. In the Bible, this site is connected with the place names of Machpelah and Kiryat Arba. Here Abraham purchased a cave for the burial of Sarah from local residents. In the third presentation, we will visit other areas in the West Bank, the traditional sites of Jacob's well and Joseph's tombs to the north, and the tomb of Rachel near Bethlehem. In the fourth presentation, we will return to Hebron to see excavations of ancient Hebron at Tel Rumeida, also known as Tel Hebron. Tradition associates this area not only with Abraham, but also with David, Ruth, and Jesse. Finally, the fifth presentation will bring us to 2 sites associated with the tree on the plains of Mamre, where Abraham welcomed heavenly visitors who promised him a child through Sarah and announced the impending destruction of Sodom.